Good day, everyone, and we are back. Yes, Bascome Corner's back. Took a little break. Yeah, I got a little tired, man. But this week, it's important that we share with you. This topic is huge, and I'm excited because we have MedStar Health that's got some staff kind of working with us. We're talking about off-season transition and training. My athletes out there, my soccer players, my football players, listen, this is so important because you have to understand the importance of what to do off season. So my panel, got a great panel here today. So I'm gonna, go through it. First of all, Jay Dyer. Jay is certified in strength and condition. Okay, and Jay is also director of sports, performance for MedStar, Union Memorial. Ryan known Ryan for a little bit. Ryan's been around, with the Blast. Ryan Zimmerman, clinical director of MedStar Health, physical therapy at, one of their locations at Rosedale. And Tim, if I mess up your name, don't shout at me. Is it, I'm going off for like, with the Y at the end, it could be Happy. Is it Happel?
That's it, you nailed it, Happel.
Tim Happel. Tim joined MedStar in 2009. He's the head athletic trainer at Howard College. So I want to welcome you guys. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time because I know you're very busy. So I want to, thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right into it. So, you guys, just being a professional coach and, coaching with the Baltimore Blast, when we talk about transition, we're talking about, I think change, right? What are some things like that these athletes should really kind of expect? And so I'll go through the physical side with Jay. Jay, if you could help us out, like what's some physicals? Because I know with the performance training that you're doing and preparing these, athletes, what are some of those physical changes they can expect as soon as I'm kind of finish my season? Right away now I should adjust. So we're looking at a physical and a mental. Yeah, what would that physical change look like?
I mean, from a physical standpoint, most seasons now for athletes are a year-long period. So you have your traditional season, you have non-traditional seasons, everything like that. So when that season finally comes to a close, there is going to be a portion of time where you're just going to have to allow your body to recover. So from the physical side of things, having yourself in a spot where you can have some downtime at the end of the season to allow your body to heal, to probably catch up on some sleep deprivation that you've had, to plan, your off-season goals, whether that's based on yours or input that you receive from the coaching staff, and then really just utilizing downtime, because one of the biggest parts of your year-long program is actually scheduling deload or rest periods. So physically, you should be preparing yourself to downshift and really have nothing structured. If you want to go out and go swimming or for a bike ride or play tennis or whatever, anything that's really non-structured, coach-led activity, because athletes have a hard time just sitting around doing nothing. But from that physical standpoint of really just anything you're doing is based on pure enjoyment or to get out and get some fresh air or get some blood flow going, but it's not something that was deemed imperative by your strength coach or your coaching staff.
Now that's awesome. Tim, I ask you, is there, and well, either you or Ryan can answer, as far as the mental state, because I know when you guys are trainer, a head trainer and dealing with some of the athletes at Howard College, are there like a mental state they have to be in? And I asked this question because I played pro for 18 years, and I found is that to shift off mentally, I always want to kind of do something. I want to work hard. So my mindset was tough to shift. And you know what I experienced? I experienced an anxiety. Yeah. So is there like that mental shift? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I have this conversation all the time with all of our athletes, and it's, regardless of the sport, you find that it's just what you said. They're having trouble, shifting into a different gear. but it's vitally important to do that. So what I counsel with my athletes is to make sure that they're finding other activities, like Jay said. If they can get into doing some biking, some swimming, something a little bit unstructured where they can still stay engaged physically and mentally and kind of have that little bit of edge about them, that's absolutely a great opportunity to find something else that can keep them active and busy and excited. It's a grueling season. So, it's important to change that mindset, to have that shift in a good, productive way, right? So, having that opportunity to look for something else, just actively say, okay, now my season's over. The hard part's over, physically speaking. What else can I do to make sure that I'm being productive and using my time well? I think is an important thing to do. So, it's tough to do, but it's a great question to ask yourself when the season ends is, okay, now it's time to shift gears. I want to deload a little bit, from a physical aspect. And I want to think about, and have a cognitive thought process about, what else can I do that's going to keep me engaged, keep me active, but also, from an injury prevention standpoint or healing standpoint, what can I do that's not going to put me in a precarious position? We're in the off season, right? We're supposed to be deloading. We're supposed to be, changing our tune just a little bit, but it doesn't mean stop. It means, think about other ways to help yourself be productive and keep mentally sharp without continuing that heavy load mentally and physically.
I think the other thing that you got to find in the off season is motivation, because you have great motivation when you're in season because you have coaches and players and you're dealing with that. And then once you go to the off season, it's the motivation to continue to go and do the things that are necessary or needed. Because without that motivation, you tend to take things a little bit less. And so therefore you're not training as hard. And those things are important because that's what's going to prepare you for the next season. And so when you lack that motivation and you lack that somebody pushing you, then that's when you can lead to injuries and such, which is what we're seeing now in this COVID era, where you're seeing more injuries because you had a prolonged off season and people didn't have that motivation or that will to do things. And now you're seeing these injuries a lot more than what we would anticipate and expect.
Right, you took my next question away from me. When we're talking about injuries, have you seen, basically, so you have seen an increase of injuries from lack of preparation. And this is because I'm looking at some of my players, even over the years, if they're not preparing themselves for when we're doing that intense training for our preseason, what we found is that like groin injuries, muscle strains. Yeah, so that's what they're speaking to, is that we are seeing, and that could be detrimental, especially if you're on college or on scholarship. So these are the things you're saying. So you guys have seen an increase of athletes coming in. Absolutely.
So unfortunately, because they haven't prepared as well as they have in the past, because usually they have this, if you're in school or you're even in these competition type things, you got practices to do that. And they didn't have that opportunity to have these practices, especially with the COVID-19 and the practice sessions that they normally have. And so then it was onus on them to either jump on an online session with their coaches or kind of, the coach give them a packet to kind of fill out themselves. And unless you have a great parent or a great motivation yourself, it's hard to kind of do that on your own and get that same intensity level that you would have experienced in those structured practices. And so with that lack of intensity, you're not preparing as well. And so then when you go into that competition setting, you have that same intensity, but you just don't have the strength and conditioning to kind of continue on that long period of time. You just can't rely on what you did in the past. Each season has to be prepared like it was your first season.
I think I can build off that from a standpoint of most athletes during this the pandemic, they are quote unquote working out. So, and that means usually doing something like going for a run, or they're, doing just the pieces of the packet that they like as opposed to the stuff that's necessary. So with our athletes, really what that means from a standpoint of just defining what Ryan's saying from a preparation standpoint is they're not doing the work from an acceleration and deceleration standpoint where they're prepping their bodies for those start-stop movements. If you're just going out for a 3-mile run, that's not helping you in a dynamic sport like soccer or lacrosse or just name it, any field sport where there's speed and power involved. So just, having to spend the time on those deceleration, acceleration movements, change of direction, without, getting data from Tim and Ryan, I'm sure what they're seeing is a lot of injuries that are consistent with those type of movements. And I think that's really what we're talking about when we say preparation. Preparation isn't just working out or quote unquote exercising. It's actually preparing for the movements of the sport.
Now that's good information. We the one thing is that I've realized that athletes, it's either Jay, they're not sure, like they leave finish the season, and now they got to some of them don't even leave unless the coach or the trainer gives them the information on what, like, the off-season training. Some of them really are not even asking the right questions. Are there things, because I know you get a lot of athletes that come to you and you ask them, do you have a schedule? And some of them, like, I don't know. There are some things that, one, building the relationship with the athletic trainers is number one. That should be the first thing. I told them, those are the ones you want to be, those are the people, if anybody, you want to be nice to them. Yeah. Between them and your physical therapist, you got to be nice to them because they get you back. There are some things, Jay, is that if I'm preparing now for, and especially this COVID time, finishing up my college, finishing up my season, there some things they should be asking for? Because sometimes I know they're probably coming to you and they're unprepared or they're unsure, and y'all got to do a reevaluation. Like, should they be asking for an evaluation, close out physicals, functional screening stuff? Is there anything that they should be asking for as an athlete to prepare them for the off season, especially in COVID?
Well, again, I think it's different based on what, there's varying age groups and everything like that. So if you're of an age where you have an athletic trainer and a strength and conditioning staff and a whole support staff, you should be collecting information from all those people, including your coaches, because that's what's going to direct your off season. If you're, saying like, your goal is to get faster, which is one of the most common ones, or get quicker, but you don't have the posterior chain strength to actually, accomplish that, then that's the thing your strength coach is going to tell you. If you don't have the ankle or hip mobility to actually get into full hip extension when you're, trying to run a sprint, then that's something that your athletic trainer or your PT could have picked up in a movement screening. And again, like sometimes even your coaches might be confused between the difference of what's quickness, what's speed, what's actual fitness for the sport that you're playing. So that's all information that should help you shape your goals and your off-season training program. Just a couple points like that.
Matt, no, I appreciate that. The one thing is Ryan and you, Tim, can help me out here, is that rest all season while asking them to stay conditioned, okay? But then you get those high, like those high athletes, right, that don't understand rest and recovery. Yeah, they don't know how to shut down. Is there a time frame? Is there, when would they know and how would they know? Is that from injury base? Is that a timing base? They got 3 months before they start back the season, and then they should rest, recover, and then get back into performance training to slowly get them back up. So Ryan, is there like a rest and recover timeline or protocol that they should really be aware of?
Yeah, I would say it depends on whether you're injured or you're playing injured during the season, because that's going to dictate how much time you really want to rest through that off season before you kind of go back full speed. So if you have a nagging ankle injury that you've just kind of played through for the last half of the season, then you really want to take about 4 to 6 weeks to try to recover from that and kind of do the simple things where you're focusing on the ankle. working on your strength of the ankle, working on the balance of the ankle. If you're just going through and you're done with the season, you didn't have any injuries, then I would say taking 2 to 3 weeks off to recover, get everything, your body to allow the nutrition to get back into yourself, to allow all the rest and get your body fully recovered before you then start back into building and breaking down and getting back to that new season.
Yeah, let me just jump in real quick. I was what I think that is important is after every part of the season, Jay was talking about how it's year long now. He's absolutely right. There's transitional phases, right? So this is a transitional phase where you go from competition into off season. There's kind of a middle phase. There's transitional phase, and minimum for all athletes, it should be at the minimum 7 to 10 days, and that's I believe it says that even in the NCAA handbook. So at minimum, you're looking at maybe 10 days of rest, recovery, where, again, you're taking stock of everything. If you have injury history, that's the time, because a lot of people have these nagging things that maybe they addressed it, maybe they didn't during the season. And this is the perfect time. I tell my athletes, what better time to address those little nagging things that are going on than now, because, in that off season, because there's no timeline, right? There's no time that you need to be back at practice, or you don't have to think about XYZ games coming up. This is the time, this is the only time you get sometimes to really focus on your health and think about, taking stock of everything. I always tell my athletes to listen to your body. What's your body telling you? If it feels tired, if there's injuries, if there's nagging things going on, what better time than now to address it, right? So that's the first thing I tell them to think about.
Tim, I would say from that standpoint too, is like with the college and the pro athletes that I work with, I push them for 3 weeks and then stretch it to 4 if we can get it. But usually somewhere after the 3-week period, they start getting antsy of wanting to get back into structure. But I also tell them, like, you're not ready to start your off season until you're actually at that point where you're motivated, something that Ryan referenced. Your motivation is high to get back into a structured training environment. And again, they're going to know, usually, in that 2-week period, they're enjoying their downtime and enjoying the lack of structure. If you get to the end of week 3, that's when they usually start really pushing to get back. And then, like I said, if we can stretch it to a month, again, if you're saying that, you're taking 1 month out of a 12-month season, there's plenty of time to get back to the level of performance that you want to be at.
Jay, that brings me around to the structure. When I think of back when I was thinking of like performance training, my focus was only thinking I got to get stronger, I got to get faster, I got to get at a high level. The one thing I did not take into consideration, and I'm going to be straight up with you, as a pro athlete now, was my nutrition. Yeah. How important, even in the off season, is that nutrition, especially if one was saying is that even we have these young people, 7, 8, 9 years old, they're playing soccer, they're playing football, they're playing baseball, they're playing basketball. They got their nutrition, and then we're also looking at a high-level athlete, right? Is that how important is that nutrition? And is that something that they can kind of develop on their own? Do they have to go to a nutritionist? Is that something that even, let's say they come to your group as performance training, is that something that they would be able to kind of get as they're doing this performance? Because I don't want them thinking that they can just lift weights, the muscles are growing, right? Can you speak on that, about the nutrition?
The first thing I would ask you is, have you ever put diesel fuel in a Ferrari? It doesn't work. Okay. Yeah. Like, you blow out the engine, so it's the same concept. It's like, if you're not going to give yourself 93 octane, then you're, wasting your time with your Ferrari. So it's the nutrition side of things. I don't think people are naive with our high school athletes. We'll just ask them straight up, what do you think you should be eating? And they will name off everything that would consist of a solid plan for nutrition. The hard part for them is actually executing that and also doing the meal prep to make sure that they're not making impulsive decisions. So those would be the points that I would make. They're all smart enough to figure it out. They just have to be disciplined enough to execute it. And that also means putting time in. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, you're doing meal prep, okay? Like, you're not cooking. Because they'll say, I don't know how to cook. And I'm like, well, Rachel Ray cooks. You're just doing meal prep, okay? So, like, boiling water or cooking chicken breasts is not cooking. You know, you can put it in the oven and walk away. So that's the idea of it, is just taking the time to do that. Make sure the stuff that's in your fridge is stuff that is in line with your nutritional plan, and then keep the impulsive, you know, meals to a minimum.
The one thing I'm just, well, not just learning. I'm learning a lot of stuff as I get older, and the importance of my trainers. Ryan and Tim, the one thing is that I want to stress to these young people, especially if they got the opportunities to have a physical therapist, to have an athletic trainer, to have a performance coach, how important is communication? Yeah, and I'm talking about, like, I've seen some athletes that wouldn't even call, like if they're having either injuries, they're having a mental breakdown, on where should they be. Some of them overexert themselves because they haven't really dissected the information that's given to them. It's got to be a communication, and it supports, for instance, let's say I go to Jay. Jay is doing up, my performance training. And then all of a sudden, but I don't tell Jay that I've got a low injury. I come back to you guys and say, listen, man, my knee's been bothering me. My ankle's been bothering me. What are you doing? Well, I'm just doing some little extra stuff. If they was to know I'm going to performance training, they got to know I'm doing high intensity. So how important is that communication? I mean, it must help with their recovery training and also their professional standard. Yes, I'll put that communication for you guys.
Yeah, it's vitally important. I can give you a scenario where I had a patient who was involved in competition, and he was coming to see us because he had a knee injury. And what we didn't know is that he was still practicing full time and still going through the games. And so I approached him on when he came into the clinic. I asked him how his knee was doing, and he said, "Well, it still hurts." And I said, "Well, what did you do over the weekend?" And he goes and tells me that he played in 4 soccer games over the weekend. And I look at him and said, "Well, that's one of the reasons why you're not getting better, is because you haven't shut down enough that your body can recover." So it was communicating not only to the athlete, but also to the parents that, this athlete needs to shut everything down so that they can properly recover and then move forward from there. So, and then I also told them from that moment forward, that once you're in that athletic competition, whether it's practice or games, if you start having pain, you have to take yourself out. You can't expect the coaches to do that, because as long as they see you playing, they're going to let you play. So you got to take onus of yourself and move forward with that.
Yeah, just building off that, I think it's nice when you have a really structured environment, like at Howard Community College here. We have, strength and conditioning staff. I'm very close with all the coaches. We communicate daily, and everything works out really well, and we can all communicate. So we put it on the athlete first. It's the athlete's responsibility to communicate these things. When they come to me with an injury, we talk about, well, does coach know about this yet? If not, I need you to bring this up to them, and then I'll follow up later. It's their responsibility, and then I'll fill in the details. Same thing on the performance side. It's, I talk with our strength and conditioning staff, and we come up with a plan, if there's an injury or what have you, and it works really nicely that way. But that's not always, how things work. On a club level, sometimes, it's not, you don't have all that in-house staff. So the onus still has to be on the athlete. It's always on the athlete first. So they have to be responsible enough to go to the right people, all the stakeholders, and say, here's what's going on, let's figure this out, or, just be open, right? So, they have to communicate with the coach. They have to go to the athletic training staff, the performance staff, and they have to do that first. After that, the coach and the parent, they probably should follow up in certain situations, depending on age and whatnot. And there should be that communication going on, pretty regularly. But the athlete has to be the one to take that initiative and do that. It's their body, it's their care. And, I think some of the things we've talked about with nutrition and these other things is intentionality, right? So if you want to get to that next level, you have to be really intentional about everything you're doing. You have to, think about, what am I doing to make sure that that I'm getting the right care, or the feedback that I'm getting is the proper feedback. So, you're taking all that into account. And I think that starts with the athlete, extends to the rest of the staff. But, it's a process, and it's vitally important. Ryan gave a great example. And I'm sure, everybody on this panel here has a couple examples of that type of thing happening. So you try to minimize that, and you just be intentional about how you're thinking about your program and, how you want to do things.
No, I appreciate that. Jay, I'm going to finish off on talking to you a little bit about, because I want parents to understand is that the importance of when you're looking at performance training. Okay. I want parents like some ideas on how do they know, right? How does the 9 or the 10-year-old parent, because I'm seeing some parents that says, yep, my kid's going to performance training, or my young person's going to performance training. What I want to actually, because, with your, Jada, strength and conditioning, trainers and coaches, what does that look like? And how would a parent know, right? And then can you walk me through, let's say I send my son, I send my daughter, what would that look like as soon as they come into your center? What would that look like, on your side?
Again, from the athlete standpoint, if you're referencing like someone as young as 9 or 10 years old, I'm just going to question kind of the idea of how long you'd actually be able to have their attention. So the problem with performance training is that everything's going to be based on a timestamp, and it costs this much money to have your kid train for this long. And there's 9 and 10-year-olds that you're going to get 20 minutes out of. And there's 9 and 10-year-olds that maybe you'll get 40 minutes out of. But a lot of it's just going to come down to their attention span. And, is it better for them to be with a performance coach, or is it better for them to be playing hopscotch in the driveway? It's a question of, there's athletes now. I worked with a middle school group last night, and I can't get all 12 of them to be able to skip. So we spent way too much time on skipping because that's where they're at. There's a disconnect in regards to movement skills for them and coordination. So again, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about training a 9 or a 10-year-old, because I don't get it. I'm like, go in the backyard, okay? Erect a basketball hoop in your driveway, put up a badminton net. I don't know, play bocce. I don't care. But like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
If there's plenty of time for that. I don't even think the kids understand why they're there. So, and again, that's a question that I ask to really young kids that we work with. There's been very few kids that are younger than 6th grade that I work with. I could definitely count it on one hand. And the question I usually ask that kid is, I want to separate them from mom and dad, and I want to say, why are you here? And if their answer is, I don't know, my mom and my dad just told me I was coming here, then that's the wrong answer. But I've had a couple kids look me straight in the eye and they go, I want to be the best. I want to get after it. I want to start getting to work. I need to improve this. I need to improve that. Maybe mom and dad coached them on the answer, but I doubt it.
Right.
But like a kid that's sitting there going, I'm not your babysitter. Okay. Like, it's like, you have to have purpose and intent. Those are words that we've used on this. And again, just signing your kids up to work with a performance trainer so you can say they're working with a performance trainer is not a good reason. And I do think most of them can't really handle it from a maturity and attention standpoint until they're at least in 6th or 7th grade. And again, that's going to be different for guys and girls. Our girls are going to mature a lot faster, which anyone that's had any experience with female or male athletes know that that's absolutely the truth. So at a younger age, your females are probably going to be more engaged. and then you're going to need a little time for the males to catch up. But, you know, we try to keep it at 7th grade as a starting point, because you're going to start working on things like running mechanics and movement skills and change of direction and acceleration, deceleration. And you got to be able to do all of that, plus be able to demonstrate other types of movement skills, foundational movements. Like you have to be able to do a squat with your, you know, we're talking about at your body weight. You have to be able to hip hinge. You have to be able to lunge. You have to be able to do all these things. You have to be able to brace. All these things that really young kids aren't going to understand, nor have the patience to go through the steps to get to that point. So I guess if I'm a parent and I'm dropping my kid off with my performance trainer, all those things I mentioned are going to be questions that I'm going to ask. And then the last thing I'm going to ask is, can you give me some references? Can you give me, do you have any parents that I could call to ask about their kids' experiences? And if they don't have like a laundry list of people that you can do that for, then I would turn around and walk out.
Yeah, I am listening to you, and I'm smiling inside. And Dave, we never connected, but I can tell you what, your answer is exactly what I was looking for, and I'll tell you why. Because there has been an abuse with taking advantage, of the lack of education from parents, and I deal with it with young people getting personal training. And if I teach a young person and I've got them in school, you got to know the attention span that they can handle. Can they understand the exercise, relate the exercise, and have a complex use? Parents just want to see a complex use. And what happens, a lot of groups are selling the idea, they're putting this commercial up, wow, I want my little person to be just like that because they need to run faster. And I appreciate it. And also, when it's looking at Ryan and Tim, when they come to you, could you imagine how many little people you're getting coming to you? Because they've got injuries, growth plate injuries, and you're like, what was you doing? Wow, I was doing the performance training, lifting weights at 7. So I appreciate it. And my thing for parents, I need you to listen, because what we are saying to you is that educate yourself and understand what you're getting into, right? I know you want your little person to be the top athlete. We all do. Okay, but you have to understand the culture and the climate for the high level training sometimes may not suit your little person who is 7, 8, 9. Be patient with their learning. They have to mature to understand it. That's what it is. Now, you will get your 7 and 8-year-old high athletes. And when they come to Jay or Ryan, if you guys have seen these athletes, all you're like, wow, what can I do? What can I do to this little person to get up, to keep them on that track? Because they have a drive, right? It's not a punitive process. We're not telling them to go do extras. They're doing it. They want to do it. So parents, I want you to really understand what we're saying to you. So, I mean, on that note, guys, I really, really appreciate it. You know, thanks for being here. You know, this show, it's the information that's laid out straight from Bermuda, all through the social media, the US. I really appreciate you guys' time, and thank you very much. Thank you guys for your time. I know you've been very busy. Jay, I really appreciate your performance side. You actually, you done sold me, Jay. You sold me, because your answer was spot on, and very rarely do you hear the frankness of when somebody is running a company that they, would just let you know, this is how it is here. And if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else if you're just looking for somebody to just, okay, I'll just take your kid and take your money, and that's okay, right? So I appreciate that, and that says a lot about your protocols and professional standards. Now I see why the connection with MedStar, Health is there, and I see why. As every time that I talk to my performers, got to go to Jay. Jay will help you out here. So I really appreciate that, Ryan. I appreciate you guys' time. And, look forward to hearing much and seeing much of you guys. So thank you very much for being on Bascome's Corner Show. Appreciate everything that you guys do for the young athletes. Thank you.